Hey folks, as promised, I'm going to run through these homework problems for you to help you out with this geometric mean similarity stuff. So let's go ahead and do this first problem. So we want to find x and y. Well, y is going to be the geometric mean of that segment and that segment. Notice it's just the two segments that it is coming out of. It's the hypotenuse of the biggest triangle, and the y value is the altitude from the right angle to the hypotenuse on that biggest triangle. So geometric means it's the square root of the product. So square root of 3 times 9. So y equals the square root, those are equal signs, y equals the square root of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to unwrite that. Notice that the square root of 9 is 3, so I can pull that 3 out. And really what I'm doing is I'm splitting this up like that. But square root of 9 is 3, so I pull that 3 out, and I get 3 times the square root of 3 as my answer for y. And yeah, you could plug that in your calculator, but the point is we don't need to. Okay, so now we want to find x, and if you think about it, we could use the Pythagorean theorem to do so, but we don't need to. You can also use the fact that we have similar triangles here, so we can say that x is going to be the square root of 9, the thing directly beneath it, the segment directly beneath it, 9 times the length of that whole side of the triangle right there. So times 9 times 3, like that. And I'm writing it all kind of in this weird way where it's all still multiplication, because again, you can split everything up, and it's easier to split up if you don't multiply it out, because you can think of it as square root of 9 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 3. Well, square root of 9 is 3 times square root of 9 is 3 times root 3 is as simplified as it gets. So I can say x equals 9 times the square root of 3. And I'm done. Well, let's go on and do the next one now. Same exact idea, except our triangle's in a different orientation. We want to find x and y. Well, x is going to be the geometric mean of the segment directly across from it, so I'm going to call that segment 4, times the length of that whole base there, the whole hypotenuse of the large triangle, which is 4 times 21. And so I'm going to simplify this as x equals 4 root 21. And again, it's not going to get any more simplified than that. Notice that I had a 4 times 4, I had a product of 4's. Well, that's 4 squared, and I'm taking the square root, so they undo each other. I get my 4 root 21 like that. And now let's find y. Y is going to be the geometric mean of 4 times 21. This dude times this dude. Square root of that product equals that dude. So y equals 2 root 2. And again, all I did was pull that 4 out. So I had root 4 by itself. Root 4 is 2. So I got 2 root 2. My two answers, x and y in exact form. Okay, these ones start to get a little more complicated. What's the relationship we know? Well, we know that this thing, x plus 3, equals the square root of the thing directly beneath it, the segment right below it, so x times the length of this whole side, which is 12. And so I get x plus 3 equals x times 12, which we'll write momentarily as 12x. But I have my unknown value stuck in the square root. So what do? Well, to undo a square root, you square it. So I'm going to square both sides. Notice that I had to put parentheses around the x plus 3. I cannot say x squared plus 3 squared. Those two expressions are not equivalent. You'll see why in a moment. X plus 3 squared is x plus 3 times, times x plus 3. And so I'll have to FOIL, and that's going to be equal to 12x because the square root and the square undo each other. There we have it. Let's FOIL now. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. 3 times x is another 3x. And 3 times 3 is 9. And that's equal to 12x, just like that. So let's move this stuff over and combine like terms. X squared plus 3 is 6. So that's a 6x right there. But I'm going to be subtracting over that 12x. 6x minus 12x is negative 6x. And then I have my plus 9. Let's factor this to find the zeros. So x there and an x there. It's all equal to 0. Well, what are two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to negative 6? Well, it's got to be negative 3 and negative 3. Because negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, and negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. So my solution has to be x equals 3, and we got all that from that triangle right there. Another one, same idea, got to set it up the same way. X plus 2 equals the square root of x times this whole length. Well, now that whole length is x plus 5. So you need to write it as x plus 5, and you need to make sure you put it inside parentheses because you will need to distribute. The idea is going to be exactly the same. We're going to square both sides, and so we're going to get x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals x squared plus 5x. Now what did I do? I FOILed it out, but I did it in my head. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2. 2 times x, I said x times 2 is 2. X times 2 is 2x. X times 2 again is another 2x, so I get a 4x. And then finally, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, but I have an x squared on both sides, so I can just subtract x squared from both sides. It'll go away. And now let's move everything to one side. Let's subtract 4x from both sides, and I'm left with 4 equals x. And I'm done with that one. Okay, just 2 more. Let's see if we can do it. Let's set this up. We know now that 12 is going to equal the square root of x times x plus 18. Just like that. And so we're going to get 12 squared is 144 equals x squared plus 18x. And so I've got 0 equals x squared plus 18x minus 144. Alright, so I don't necessarily know how to factor this in my head super easily, so I'm just going to use the quadratic formula. Remember, quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and that is x equals, whoa, just how about one of those equals there? Okay, and remember that this is your A coefficient, that's your B coefficient, and that's your C coefficient, and it has to include that negative. So, we will say negative B is negative 18 plus or minus the square root of 18 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is negative 144. So I have a double negative, which makes that a positive right there. All of that divided by 2 times a, which again is 1. So I'm not going to do this one in my head. I'm going to grab a calculator for this, and I am going to type it like this. I'm going to open a parenthesis. I'm going to do negative 18 plus square root. It'll do that. It'll automatically put that parenthesis there. Then I'm going to type 18 squared plus 4, open a new parenthesis, 144, close that closed my parentheses around the 144, close another one, that closed my parenthesis around the square root, and then close that last one to close a parenthesis on the front, and then I can divide that by 2. That's if you want to do it in one step. That's just how I roll. And when you do that, you get 6. And I'm going to do the same exact thing now, except instead of a plus, I'm going to do a minus for the plus or minus from right there. So when you do that, and first off, if you hit second enter, it's going to bring back up the thing you typed last. And now I can just move up and change the plus to a minus sign. When you do that, you get negative 24 as the second solution. So we get the two solutions, x equals 6 and negative 24. That means we could have factored this as x minus 6 and x plus 24. Notice it's the opposite of the solutions. But the point is, what were we doing? We were dealing with this triangle, which means this x value has to be positive, so x equals 6. Alright, last problem here. Let's go ahead and see how we need to set this up. Well, we know that this bit right there, so that x plus 5 right there, that is going to be the geometric mean, which means the square root of the product of that bit, x, times that bit, 20. So, just like before, we're going to need to square both sides to get x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 20x. And we'll subtract 20x from both sides to get x squared minus 10x plus 25 equals 0. And that will factor as x minus 5 quantity squared. So my solution is x equals 5. And you could absolutely, again, use a quadratic formula, but if you know how to factor, it makes it a lot easier.